Hi, I'm Carmen, and this is a miscellaneous vegan where I share a little R&R recipes and reviews. And today we're going to be making jerk chickpeas. So stay tuned. If you haven't done so yet, make sure you like and subscribe for recipes and reviews in New York City and around the world, and for Coaching Mondays. These are the ingredients you will need: garbanzo beans, crushed tomatoes, coconut milk, jerk seasoning, garlic, chopped onion, salt, and pepper. And most of these chickpea recipes you will need is the garbanzo beans and the coconut milk. So let's move on to starting to cook. So you're going to turn on your heat to medium high. And again, if you haven't seen my unboxing of these non-toxic pots, I will link it below. I'm using avocado oil. That is the preferred oil that I like to cook with, and not extra virgin olive oil. The extra virgin olive oil, I use it for my salads. But once the oil starts heating up, you're going to add your onions. So remember from my last video, I did chop up a big onion and divide it into separate baggies. Is because you see how quickly that is. I don't have to chop any onions. I don't have to start crying, and it just makes my cooking process so much quicker. So I do that a lot with a lot of my vegetables that I use. I chop it in bulk and put it in a Ziploc bag. Now I'm adding my garlic. So remember, if you don't have fresh garlic, this is what I have. I'm using what I have in my refrigerator. So the recipe calls for about 2 to 3 cloves of garlic, but I add a lot of garlic. I love garlic in almost everything I make. So here we are. And we're just going to saute the onions and the garlic for a little bit. At this point, I do add a little bit of pepper, but it's up to you. And then I add the chickpeas. It's optional. You can add the pepper before and after when I add the salt. But personally, I like to add the pepper before I add the garbanzo beans. So it's really a preference. So I empty out my garbanzo beans, chickpeas, and I saute it a little with the onion, the garlic, and the pepper. Remember, I don't salt my food until the very end. Once all the seasoning and it's cooked for a little bit, then I taste for salt, because I don't like to cook with too much salt. I'm trying to cut down on that. And now we're going to add the coconut milk. So I didn't let it saute too long. It was probably for a few seconds. So I'm using the entire can of coconut milk. Remember, I prefer to cook with fresh ingredients, but at this point, this is what I have. I'm using canned coconut milk, but you can make fresh coconut milk and use it, and it will taste way better, 10 times better, and you will see the difference. So you're going to let this saute for a little bit, and then we're going to add our jerk seasoning. So I honestly didn't let it saute for a little bit. I didn't let it come to a boil. I used about a tablespoon worth of jerk seasoning, but I do add a little at the end. So you want to taste and then season. For me, I added 2 tablespoons of jerk seasoning, but it's up to what you can handle, because remember, this is mild, but it's still jerk seasoning and it's still hot. So it's up to your taste buds. But here I'm just going to let it simmer for a little bit. And when you let it simmer, the coconut milk will reduce and it will thicken. But here I'm adding probably a cup of the chopped tomatoes. Yeah, just about a cup of the chopped tomatoes, and we're going to stir it up. And once we mix this well, we're going to allow it to come to a simmer. And the rest of the crushed tomatoes, you just want to find a glass container and make sure you store it, because you can use this in different recipes. And if you stick with this channel, you will see what I will use it for later on. But I'm just using the last bit of tomato paste. Well, it's not tomato paste, it's crushed tomatoes, and just adding it. So this is something optional. It's just leftovers from my past recipes. I have made like a butter bean recipe, and I use this. I use it in a lot of my dishes, but This is optional. You do not need it for this recipe, but if you have it, you can add a tablespoon of that. At this point, you're going to want to taste it and then add your salt. I add a pinch of salt, probably 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and you just let it come to a boil. And then you taste it again, and then you decide whether or not you want to add more salt, more jerk seasoning, more pepper. It all depends on your taste preference. And as you can see, I added a little bit more of the tomato paste. That's why the color changed, and I also will turn on the light overhead. So this is it. You're gonna let it simmer some more until it thickens up to your preference. If you like it runny, then you're done. But for me, I'm gonna let it simmer for another few minutes, and then I will be finished. Well, here you have it, guys, your jerk chickpea recipe. And you can serve this over rice or preferably quinoa. Enjoy, and always remember, sweeties, be real, not perfect. Bye.